After my home was lost, my son said no space for you. Then I discovered his amazing secret. The morning air was heavy with smoke, a bitter reminder of everything Emily had lost. As she stood in the charred remains of her once vibrant home, she felt like a ghost haunting the ashes. The silent whispers of neighbors seeped into her ears, each hushed tone a dagger of pity and judgment. How could they understand? How could they know the depths of her despair? Just a few days ago, she was a single mother juggling school pickups, soccer games, and the trifles of life. Now, she was standing on the precipice of despair, gripping the shattered pieces of her family. Mom! Jake's voice pulled her back from the brink. Her 16-year-old son stood, a whirlwind of emotions reflected in his eyes. He looked so fragile yet so fierce. We need to think of something. But there was a wall growing between them, brick by brick. When Emily tried to reach out, he turned away, burying himself in silence, and the gulf between them widened. Days passed like shadows creeping over the sun. Each morning, Emily woke determined to create a sense of normalcy for Jake. Yet every evening would devolve into a quiet storm, one where tyrannical words flashed between them. Frustrations boiled over one rainy afternoon. Jake exploded, "There's no space for you." The simple pronouncement blazed like a wildfire, singeing her heart. In that moment, she felt as if she had lost both her home and her son. Tears welled, and in that sorrow, she doubted her ability to hold them together. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Weeks rolled by, and barely a trace of the boy she once knew lingered. One evening, clenching her fists as she scouted the community center for resources, Emily's world tilted. She paused mid-step when she saw him, Jake, surrounded by boxes, a determined light in his eyes. He was organizing a donation drive for families in need, victims like them. Each item they collected bore stories of struggles and heartaches. Watching silently, she felt the pressing weight of pride and heartbreak. Here he was, her son, not just carrying his own grief but reaching out to others. Her heart raced. The wall she thought he was building wasn't bricks but rather a fortress of empathy, hiding his battle behind a mask of strength. As they began to navigate their new lives together, something began to shift. Their shared mission ignited connection. They talked through the pain, the anxiety lifted just a bit. Yet, moments of friction loomed, and Emily began to wonder about the courage hidden beneath Jake's tough exterior. But questions swirled in Emily's mind. Could she truly see the hero standing right before her? Or would their journey lead them deeper into misunderstanding, leaving more scars than healing? The answer lay just out of reach, and her heart ached for the bond they had nearly lost. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the community center as Jake and Emily worked side by side. The once tangible distance between them seemed to shrink, yet unspoken fears lingered like smoke in the air. Each box they loaded, each item they organized, became a physical representation of their new reality. "Look at this," Jake said, holding up a worn teddy bear. His voice was softer now, almost vulnerable. "Someone's little brother is going to be really happy to get this." The tenderness in his tone cracked the silence that often hung between them. Emily watched him, really watched him, and her heart swelled with a mix of sorrow and pride. "Yeah, it's amazing how even the simplest things can mean so much," she replied, hoping to bridge the gap that still lingered. It was a small victory, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like perhaps they were starting to move forward together. Jake nodded, eyes thoughtful. "You think we'll be okay?" he asked, glancing up from the pile of donations. It struck Emily how much weight that question carried. He was asking not just about the drive or the help they were providing but about them, about their fragile relationship, about their future. "Yeah," she said, her voice steady. "I really do. We're in this together, you know. There's always a way forward." The moment hung suspended, fragile yet charged with promise. But Jake's face shifted, the walls rising once more. Together I get that, but what if I'm not enough? The confession was pained, raw. He dropped his gaze, and Emily's heart sank further. Jake, she started, but he cut her off. Everyone's counting on me. I'm doing all this, but I still feel like I'm just pretending. The weight of his words flooded the space between them, filling the gaps left by silence and misunderstandings. Emily realized this was Jake's way of coping, a way to mask his own fears and insecurities behind the act of helping others. None of us are pretending, honey, she replied gently. We all have our own battles. You've shown more strength than I've ever seen. But it's okay to feel scared and unsure. He finally looked at her, those fierce eyes glistening with unfallen tears. But I don't want you to rely on me, Mom. What if I fail? Failure is part of life, but what matters is how we rise up after that. I'm still learning. Emily reached out, brushing her fingers against his arm. Just like you. We can learn together. With that, the veil between them lifted a bit more, revealing the raw foundation of their bond. The struggle wasn't over. There were still scars and fears to navigate, but a spark of understanding danced in the air. The last of the donations were packed away. Jake hesitated before leaving the community center. Mom? His tone held a hint of hope. Yes, Jake? She stepped closer, feeling the undeniable shift between them, a breath of renewed connection. I've got an idea. What if we do something bigger? Like a fundraiser, right here, for all of us. Families like ours? Emily's heart leaped. It was brilliant. That's such a great idea. We can reach out to the schools, the businesses. But even as they plotted, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just charitable action. Jake was carving out a space for himself, a way to connect, and in his journey, she recognized her own, yet, even as hope blossomed, doubts skittered in the edges of her mind. Would this new path truly bring them closer, or were they both still running from something deeper? The evening fell around them, wrapping both mother and son in a fragile embrace of possibility. As they stepped outside, a chill in the air reminded Emily of the journey still ahead. Would they find a way to merge their paths, or would they continue to stand at opposing ends of a vast divide? Jake's words echoed as they walked home, the question lingering like a shadow, leaving Emily to wonder if their newfound unity would endure the trials yet to come. What secrets remained hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be unveiled? The lights of their small town sparkled in the distance as they made their way home. The crisp evening air nipped at Emily's cheeks, but there was warmth blooming inside her chest that she couldn't quite understand. Jake walked beside her, his hands stuffed into his pockets, his brows furrowed as if deep in thought. Can I ask you something? He finally broke the silence. Of course, Emily replied, glancing over at him. What if we don't just do one fundraiser? What if we made it a whole series? Like, every month or something. His eyes sparked with excitement, a light that made him look more like the boy he once was. That's a great idea. We can create community events, bake sales, car washes, game nights, she enthused, suddenly reaching for his vision. The thought of turning their idea into something bigger felt like a cherry blossom blooming in the middle of winter. But it's more than that. It's about us, you know. Jake's voice softened, his enthusiasm tempered with uncertainty. Building something together. Something that means something. For everyone. Emily nodded slowly. We're not just making money, are we? We're bringing people together. Exactly. His eyes brightened again. People need that connection. They need to feel they're not alone. Just like us. The streets were still quiet as they approached their home, but the inside pulsed with life. Despite the chaos of their recent past, Emily couldn't help but see hope weaving its way through their current circumstances. She turned to Jake, cutting off the silence before it had a chance to thicken again. You know, this is really important work you're doing. You're healing people, not just through charity but by letting them see they're not alone. Do you really think so? Jake asked, biting his lip in a way that showed he was still grappling with self-doubt. I truly do, she reassured, her voice firm like anchor lines. Each person who comes to our events will be reminded that they're valued, that they're not lost or forgotten. As they stepped inside their home, the familiar scents enveloped them. Warm bread from earlier that evening lingered in the air. Yet, amid the comfort, Emily still felt the weight of unresolved issues that hung above them like a dark cloud. Suddenly, Jake paused at the threshold, his body tense. "Mom," he said slowly, "there's something I've been wanting to tell you about school." Her stomach twisted. "What about school, Jake?" I got into trouble last month." He hesitated, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "I didn't tell you because I thought you'd be disappointed." "Jake," she started, her heart racing as the fear of their newfound connection being put to the test washed over her. Some kids were making fun of a girl in class, so I stood up for her." He took a deep breath. "But it turned into something bigger. I ended up getting into a fight, and I got suspended. That's why I've been so stressed." The storm in her heart calmed slightly, replaced by a mix of concern and pride. "I'm so proud of you for standing up for her. But fighting is never the answer. You know that, right?" "I know," he mumbled, looking down at his shoes. "But they were just being cruel. It made me think of everything we've been through. I couldn't stand by and let it happen." Emily reached for him, pulling him into an embrace. Her heart ached for the pain he had felt, but it surged with admiration, too. "We all make mistakes, Jake. Just remember, turning toward kindness and courage is what counts." As they broke apart, she noticed the shadows of doubt lingering in his eyes. Could they really transform this moment into something powerful, something that would heal the wounds they both carried? Tomorrow would be the first meeting to plan their event. It felt monumental, both a personal journey and a chance to reach the community. But as she turned to the kitchen, an unease threaded through her thoughts. Would they actually pull it off? And more importantly, what lay beneath the surface of Jake's struggle? A light flickered in the living room, casting dancing shadows, and as Emily searched for answers, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Secrets had a way of revealing themselves, and she was anxious to see what else was hiding in the dark corners of their lives. What other truths would change everything she thought she knew? The morning sun poured through the kitchen window, warm and inviting. Emily stood at the counter, sipping her coffee, her mind racing with thoughts about the meeting ahead. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but it didn't quite drown out her nerves. Would they really be able to pull this together? She had faith in the idea, but in the back of her mind, echoes of doubt lingered. When Jake entered, his hair tousled, eyes still heavy with sleep, she felt a spark of happiness. There he was, her son, ready to face another day. "Hey, buddy," she said, trying to infuse her voice with cheer. "You ready for today? Big plans?" He shrugged, sitting down at the breakfast table, pushing his plate of toast around absent-mindedly. "I guess. I just hope people come." "They will," Emily assured him, her confidence brighter than her morning brew. "This is going to be something special. You've got a good heart, and that draws people in." Jake's gaze flickered to the floor. What if they don't care? What if it's just a waste of time? "No way," she insisted, gently placing a hand on his arm. "Remember, we're not just looking for money. We're building something the community really needs. The connection matters." He nodded slowly, then sighed. "I just don't want to mess it up, Mom." His voice was quiet, heavy. Emily's heart ached for him. You can't control everything, and it's okay to feel uncertain. Just breathe and be yourself. That's what this is all about. After breakfast, they headed to the community center. It was a small building, not much to look at from the outside, but inside it pulsed with possibility. As they pulled into the parking lot, Emily glanced at Jake, whose eyes were wide with both excitement and trepidation. The bustling energy of people already arriving made him hesitate. "Let us go," she encouraged, nudging him forward. "We're in this together." As they entered, a wave of chatter and laughter washed over them. A few familiar faces greeted them, smiles lighting up the room. Emily felt buoyed by their warmth, but she could sense Jake's body stiffen beside her. "Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming." Her voice rang out, drawing attention. She gestured excitedly. "Today marks the beginning of something incredible, not just for us but for our community." Applause broke the initial tension, and she watched as Jake absorbed this moment. It mattered. He might just find his footing here. They split into groups, everyone brainstorming ideas. Jake found a seat at a table filled with classmates from school, and Emily's heart soared at the sight. They were engaging with him, asking questions about his ideas. It was a small victory, but she savored it. "Jake, how about a movie night?" a girl suggested, her enthusiasm lighting up the table. "We could use the old community center as the venue." "I like that," Jake replied, surprising even himself. "We could make it a themed night, maybe a superhero marathon." As ideas flowed, Emily felt a warmth spread through her. Nothing felt wasted in this moment. Community spirit was alive, and so was Jake, but then, during a lull in the conversation, Jake's face shifted. He glanced toward the door, eyes narrowing, and Emily followed his gaze. A group of older boys from school had entered, laughter trailing behind them like a storm. Her heart sank. "Hey, look who it is," one of them called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The charity duo. You think anyone cares what you're doing?" The laughter rang sharp in Emily's ears. She could see Jake's fists clenching on the table, his earlier confidence crumbling. "Jake, forget them," she whispered fiercely. "You're doing something good here." But his face hardened as he shot a glance towards her, filled with a mix of hurt and indignation. "I don't need your help," he snapped, his voice louder than intended. "I can handle this." The entire room fell silent, every gaze resting on Jake. Emily felt her heart plummet. Was this the moment where everything they built began to unravel? Before she could respond, Jake bolted up from the table, facing the crowd. The storm inside him wild and raw. "I didn't ask for your opinion," he said, voice shaky, but determination flickered in his eyes. "I'm here to help people. If you have a problem with that, then maybe you should rethink what it means to be part of this town." The room buzzed with a mix of admiration and confusion. Emily stood, mouth agape as the emotions surged within her. This wasn't he, the timid boy who had entered. Something deeper had awakened in him. As the older boys exchanged bewildered looks, she felt an urge to step in, to soothe the storm. But could she let him ride this wave? Would he actually find his voice? Her heart raced as she realized that Jake's outburst had shifted something in the room. People were leaning in, engaging, and for the first time, she understood the power of truth, but as the tension hung like fog in the air, one question nagged at her. What new truths would rise from this moment? Jake stood there, breathing heavily, and she could sense that something more was about to unfold. But was he ready to face whatever lay ahead? The silence lingered, thick and charged. Jake caught his breath, fists still clenched, the adrenaline pulsing through him. Beside him, Emily's heart raced. Was this the change they so desperately needed? She could see glimmers of respect forming in the eyes of those around them, but the weight of the older boy's judgment still loomed. Nice speech." One of the boys sneered, his voice filled with mockery. "Too bad it doesn't matter." He swaggered closer, as if to challenge Jake, sizing him up. The tension crackled like electricity, and Emily felt her pulse pounding in her temples. "Shut up, Mason," another voice piped up from the crowd. A girl with dark curls, who had been silently supportive, stood up. "You don't know anything about what they're trying to do. Maybe you should just go back to being a jerk." Emily felt a rush of gratitude for the girl's unexpected loyalty. There was power in numbers, and she sensed that Jake's courage was kindling something in others. One by one, people began to nod and murmur in agreement. "Let us focus on what we're here for," Jake said, finding his footing again. "We can make this community better. We can do something." Each word became a rallying cry. The conversations resumed, turning from fear to hope. Ideas bounced around the room, fueled by newfound freedom. Emily witnessed the shift, proud tears stinging her eyes. "Hey, why not start with a community cleanup day?" someone suggested, and applause erupted. Jake's eyes sparkled with reinvigorated energy as he added, "And a bake sale. We can use the money for supplies." He looked around, emboldened. He wasn't just Jake anymore, he was a beacon for change. "Jake!" Emily exclaimed, her heart swelling. "That's perfect." But in the midst of the whirlwind of support and laughter, she noticed the older boys had moved to the back, whispering urgently among themselves. Mason's gaze narrowed, growing dark and intense. A rush of worry tangled with her pride. Would they let it go, or was this just the beginning of something bigger? "Let us make it happen!" shouted Jake, raising his voice above the buzz, and the crowd erupted into cheers. The momentum surged, with people practically leaping to their feet, buzzing with enthusiasm. It was electric, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking in the shadows. As they dove deeper into planning, the room filled with laughter. Jake had found his stride. He was animated, a leader guiding his friends toward their vision. Emily admired him, a sense of fulfillment blooming within her, but then, in the midst of all the excitement, her phone buzzed sharply in her pocket, slicing through the joy. Pulling it out, her stomach dropped. It was a text from the landlord, dark and unexpected, a warning about the rental payments falling behind. Despair began to claw at her chest. She looked up at Jake, his face alight with passion. Her heart twisted with fear. If they lost their home, if the community's support didn't stretch to save them, Mom? Jake's voice anchored her back. "Everything okay?" The concern in his eyes shattered her momentary daze, yet burdened her further. "Yeah, just a lot to think about," she replied, forcing a smile. But deep down, she feared the storm that might be brewing. As Jake continued to brainstorm ideas, Emily felt the walls close in each conversation echoing louder than the last, a reminder of their reality. How could they lift others up when they were teetering on the edge themselves? "What if we could do this?" Jake suggested, and everyone nodded eagerly, but behind every smile lay an unspoken question. Could they hold on to the connection they were building when everything around them was crumbling? The laughter buzzed around her, but Emily felt detached from it, the weight pressing down. Would she share her worries with Jake? Would she shatter this moment of hope? Suddenly, the door swung open, and Mason strode back in, a peculiar glint in his eye. With a boldness that threatened to tip everything sideways, he headed straight toward them. "Can I talk to you, Jake?" he called, his voice cutting through the jubilation. The room fell silent again. Emily felt her breath catch. Was this the danger she had feared? Jake prepared to respond, bravely facing his adversary. What would he say? Would this be a moment of redemption or another blow to his fragile confidence? The crowd shifted, a ripple of anticipation washing over everyone. And there it was, an electric moment where uncertainty tangled with possibility. What was going to happen next? The air was heavy with expectation as Jake fixed his gaze on Mason. Emily held her breath, feeling the tension spread through the crowd. Mason had been a constant thorn in their side, and she knew everyone shared some unspoken fear that he could derail their moment of change with a single word. "What do you want, Mason?" Jake asked, his voice steady but with an edge. He wasn't backing down, not now. Mason smirked, crossing his arms as he leaned against the doorframe. "I just wanted to say, you have guts. A lot more than I gave you credit for." The unexpected compliment hung in the air like a cautionary tale. "But you really think this whole thing will work? Just a bake sale? A cleanup day?" The crowd murmured uncertainly. A few of Jake's supporters shifted, doubt flaring up. "In case you haven't noticed, people around here don't change just because you want them to," Mason continued, his tone dripping with disdain. "You think you're some kind of hero? You'll just end up disappointing everyone." Again. Emily felt a wave of protectiveness surge within her. She wanted to shout back, to defend Jake and their vision, but she held her tongue, knowing that this battle was Jake's to fight. "You're right," Jake said, surprising everyone, including Emily. "I can't promise I'll make things perfect. I can't even promise we won't fail. But I can promise we'll try. Isn't that worth something? Mason rolled his eyes, unimpressed. You think trying is enough? Maybe you should have stayed quiet, farmer boy. At least then you wouldn't be embarrassing yourself. But here's the thing, Mason, Jake pressed on, clearly invigorated by the challenge. If I fall flat on my face while trying to bring people together, then at least I can say I tried. What about you? When was the last time you did something that mattered? The crowd erupted in applause, but Emily's heart raced. Could Jake really be turning this around? Mason's smirk faded slightly, anger creeping into his demeanor. Watch yourself, Jake. I won't forget this. With that, he turned on his heel and sauntered back out, leaving a palpable void. The air felt lighter, yet Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Mason had merely retreated to regroup. She exchanged glances with Jake, who looked both triumphant and shaken. Did you really mean that? Emily asked, stepping closer to him, concern threading through her voice. You took a risk. Yeah. It was instinct, I guess, Jake replied, rubbing the back of his neck, his confident facade cracking just a little. But maybe that's the point. I've always been afraid to voice my thoughts in public, and maybe Mason's right about a lot of things. Maybe I'll mess up. So what? She said, her own fears echoing in her mind. Even if you do, you've already changed some people. You changed me. A small smile creased his face, breaking through the tension. I suppose we'll see. But now we have to pull everyone back together. We can't let this moment slip away. We need to get back to planning. The crowd reformed, and excitement pulsed back through the room, new ideas sparking like firecrackers. Emily watched Jake step back into the spotlight. He was alive with purpose. But somewhere deep inside, doubt lingered, echoing Mason's words. What if all this didn't come together? What if the bake sale couldn't save them? As laughter and chatter filled the room again, she felt a knot tightening in her stomach, the reality of their struggles still looming large. What's next, Jake? Are we going to make this work? She asked, voice low enough that only he could hear. His smile faltered for just a heartbeat. We're going to try, he said. And trying is what counts. In that moment, she could see the flicker of hope, but it was fragile, just like their world around them. How long before reality would force them to confront their fears again? Then, suddenly, the door swung open one more time. Emily gasped as she recognized the figure standing there. Mason had returned, and he wasn't alone. This time, he had backup. The atmosphere shifted instantly as Mason stepped back inside, flanked by a couple of familiar faces, Derek and Lisa, two of the most outspoken critics of Jake's plans. The collective gasp from the crowd was almost deafening. Fear rippled through Emily, and her heart sank. This wasn't just a simple comeback. Mason had rallied support, and the stakes had just risen. Thought you could win this one without a fight? Mason's voice dripped with mockery as he surveyed the room. Let me introduce you to my friends. From here on out, you're not just facing me. You're facing all of us. Emily felt a wave of heat rush to her cheeks. They were outnumbered now. Jake clenched his fists, his earlier confidence shattered like glass. Emily reached for his arm, instinctively grounding herself in his presence. We can handle this, she whispered, hoping to instill some reassurance. Ah, look at that. A little solidarity, Mason scoffed. But solidarity won't save you from the truth. People will laugh at you, Jake. They'll laugh at your little bake sale and your cleanup day. They want things to stay as they are. It's easier that way. There's more to life than just easy, Mason, Jake countered, trying to keep his calm amidst the rising tension in the room. Some people want change, and if we try together, we can make it happen. It just takes a little courage. Courage? Derek echoed, stepping forward with a scoff. You mean foolishness. And we're all tired of being dragged into your foolishness, Jake. We've been here before, and it led to nothing but disappointment. Their words hit hard, like ice water dousing a flame. Emily could see some heads nodding among the crowd. Doubt was creeping back in. She felt small in the face of Mason's verbal barrage, her hands clammy and her stomach tightening. Just when it seemed their momentum was growing, it appeared to be slipping through their fingers. Jake looked around the room, searching for the strength he'd just summoned moments ago. I understand that change is scary. He paused, his voice lower. I know it is for me too. But we all want a better place to call home, right? We can't be afraid of trying, otherwise, we'll never grow. It's easy for you to say, farmer boy, Lisa chimed in, crossing her arms defiantly. You're safe in your little world, and most of us can't afford to risk that. What if you fail again? What do we tell our families then? Sorry, we tried a bake sale. Mason is right, another voice chimed, shaky but clear. It was one of his former supporters, a woman named Sarah. What if it does fail? It's not just about you anymore, it's about the community. We can't afford the mess. Jake's heart sank. But aren't we supposed to be fighting for a place we can all feel proud of? We can't just let fear decide our lives for us. His anger boiled beneath the surface, but he pressed on. Fear stops us from really living. We can't let it win. There you go again, Mason said, his smirk widening. You think shouting what you want to happen is enough? You think feelings will change realities? Emily felt the grip on her heart tighten as she watched the crowd's expressions shift, some uncertain, some visibly swayed by Mason's cynical charm. She stepped closer to Jake. Don't give in, Jake. We need to own this moment. But Mason seemed ready for battle, stepping forward as the crowd's unease grew palpable. You're doing all this for nothing, Jake, he warned, voice almost conspiratorial. Soon, you'll see it's a waste of time. Just like everything else you've ever tried. With that chilling statement hanging in the air, Emily realized the fight was only just beginning. They had to stand firm, not just for themselves but for everyone who believed in a better future. But as the crowd murmured and shifted, she could see the flicker of indecision in their eyes. What would come next? Would Jake have the strength to push back, or was he about to crumble under the weight of Mason and his followers? In that moment, a chilling thought struck her. What if Mason had something else planned, something even darker than just words? The tension felt electric, and Emily knew they were on the edge of something monumental. What would Mason's next move be? And would they be able to fight back hard enough to hold on to their dreams? Jake's heart raced as the moment hung heavy in the air, charged with hostility and fear. He scanned the faces of the crowd, searching for a glimmer of support, something, anything to hold on to. Many gazes were averted, faces set in judgment or disbelief. The weight of their doubts felt like a tangible force pushing down on him. Listen. He croaked, fighting to lift the mood that had clouded the room. All I'm asking is that we try together. Just a little effort to bring something good into our lives. A bake sale is just the start. Mason leaned back, folding his arms. So, you're saying a baked good can change the world? That's cute. Jake, it feels like a fool's errand, Sarah murmured, her voice barely above a whisper now, as if torn between loyalty and fear. The room fell silent, and yet the silence roared in Emily's ears. She could almost hear the words give up echoing around the walls. Her mind raced, searching for what to say next, for something strong enough to cut through the bleak atmosphere. Jake has a point, she finally said, stepping forward. This isn't just about selling cupcakes and cookies. It's about building something more, about coming together as a community. If we don't start somewhere, we're just letting fear control us. Her heart pounded as she spoke, her gaze unwavering on the faces that still turned away. Right, Mason scoffed, directing his disdain at her. What do you know about real problems? How is selling cookies going to help anyone pay their bills? It's naive. Maybe it's not the solution, she retorted, frustration bubbling. But it's a start. Each time we come together, we build trust and friendship. And that, she pointed emphatically, that is how you strengthen a community. It takes small steps to forge a path forward. Jake smiled, the flicker of hope in her words reigniting some courage within him. Exactly. Think of the last time we all joined forces for the park cleanup. Look at what we accomplished. His memory flashed back to the cleanup, the laughter, the camaraderie. That day, they all felt the community spirit surge through them. He longed for that energy again, but could it ever come back? The crowd remained still, the murmurs sweeping like leaves in the wind, but Emily saw a few nodding. People want to laugh at us because they fear change, she continued, sensing the slight shift in mood. But if we bicker amongst ourselves, we'll never move forward. Don't let Mason tear us apart. He thrives on our doubts. Mason's expression shifted, a mixture of annoyance and concern crossing his face. Oh, please. Talk all you want, but the reality is still there. Most of you are scared to fight, scared to rock the boat. Jake clenched his fists, anger lacing his tone. And most of us are tired of being pushed around. If we get nothing done, then what kind of community are we? At least we can try. The air shifted palpably as voices began to rise, some defending Jake, others echoing Mason's fears. Emily caught the apprehension in the crowd, but within the chaos, a spark of determination ignited. She looked to Jake, her heart in her throat. We need to decide now together. We can stand tall or we can shrink. What will it be? Caught between two sides, the crowd faced unresolved tension, but Emily sensed a feverish stir in the air. Jake's conviction would ripple if only they could push past the doubts swirling around. The stakes were immense, yet these moments were what truly defined a community. Suddenly, from the back of the room, a voice piped up. What if we vote? That question spun in the air, puncturing the thick wall of uncertainty. Gasps erupted. A palpable tension grew in the room. Would they stand together, or would they let Mason's words keep them paralyzed? As the murmurs turned into debate, Emily looked at Jake, and at that moment, she realized something. They were not done fighting. The outcome hung in the balance. Would the community come together to defy Mason, or let fear take root once more? What would happen next could change everything if they dared to take a step forward. Emily felt her heart thumping in her chest as the proposal hovered like a cloud over the room, dark and heavy. A vote. Every face now etched with the gravity of that moment. It was a chance, and yet it was a risk. Could they truly come together? She glanced at Jake, his eyes narrowed and fierce. Let us take a vote. Someone shouted from the back. Yes. Another voice chimed in, and slowly, the murmurs began to build. Jake jumped onto the small podium, raising his arms for silence. If we're going to do this, we need to be honest. We each have a choice: either we stand together and support this idea, or we let the fear push us back into the shadows. His voice was steady, calm amidst the rising tension. Mason snorted, clearly upset. And if you think this vote will change anything, you're more naive than I realized. Just because you put your hands in the air doesn't mean the problem goes away. Emily bristled at Mason's sneer, but she felt a flicker of hope ignite in the roiling sea of uncertainty. Jake was right, they had to face this together. She turned back to the crowd, her breath caught in her throat, but she pushed through. No more fighting. Let us show what we can do if we stand united. Even if it's just cookies. Cookies. Mason rolled his eyes dramatically. That's what all of this comes down to. Cookie sales? Yes. Jake answered, his voice sharper, fiercer than before. It's about more than cookies. It's about community. About heart. A moment of stillness hung like a heavy fog as the crowd seemed to consider his words. Emily watched as expressions of doubt flickered across faces, then slowly began to shift. Were they finally seeing the truth? Let us just do it, an older gentleman near the front spoke up, surprisingly firm. I say we vote. The energy in the room changed. More voices rose, others joined him, pushing anger away, letting camaraderie take its place like a blanket pulled tight to ward off winter's chill. Slowly, hands began to rise, tentatively at first but then with increasing certainty. Emily felt a thrill of adrenaline. They were doing this. They were choosing to face forward instead of retreating back into their own corners. "Who's for Jake's bake sale?" she called, raising her hand high, and to her astonishment, hands began rising around the room until it became a wave of support. She looked at Jake, who was beaming, his eyes bright. But Mason, visibly agitated, clutched the back of his chair. "This isn't over. Just because you think you can mobilize a bake sale doesn't mean things will change. We still have bills to pay. The real issues won't magically disappear." "Maybe not," Jake replied, his tone unyielding. "But it's a start, and we have to start somewhere." With that, the room erupted into cheers and applause, each person fighting their own lingering doubts with the rhythm of hope. Emily caught Jake's eye again. The power of change was intoxicating. She could feel it, swirling beneath their feet, ready to lift them up, but just as their spirits soared, a shadow fell across the bright moment. "You think this is enough?" Mason shouted one last time, punctuating the possibility with dark eyes. "You're just going to keep fighting in this little bubble while the real world moves on without you." With Mason's words, an uneasy pause ensued. Each person felt the tremors of doubt rattle once more. Emily's heart raced. Had they misstepped? Had they only spurred more fear instead of resolving it? As she looked around the room, she realized they were standing at a critical juncture. The decision felt monumental, and its impact loomed larger than any cocoa or cookie they could sell. This tasted like hope, but with it came the taste of fear. What would happen when the votes were counted? Would the community truly unite, or was this just a fleeting spark in the endless night? As the applause faded, a new question arose. Would they press forward undeterred, or would doubt find its way back in? The real fight was just beginning. The evening sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in warm hues of orange and pink, but inside the community center, anxiety coiled tight. Despite the victory of their vote, Emily felt a weight settling back onto her heart. The fear that Mason had sown still lingered in the air, heavy and thick. Jake stood at the center of the room, an electric energy pulsing through him. "All right, let's make this happen," he shouted, marshalling the crowd. His voice rang out louder, firmer than before. "Our bake sale and cleanup day will be the start of something amazing for everyone." Cheers erupted around him, but Emily remained on the edge of the celebration, sensing a storm brewing. What if this wasn't enough? What if the bake sale couldn't fix their problems? "We have to nail down the details," Jake continued, drawing people together to organize. Tonight's momentum was priceless, but an undercurrent of uncertainty still thrummed beneath the excitement. Emily watched as hands shot up to volunteer. A surge of passion filled the room, and for a moment, hope shone bright against the encroaching shadows. "Let's get tables set up outside. We can do a community dinner alongside the bake sale," someone shouted from the back. "Yeah. And we can invite local businesses to donate too," chimed in another voice. Emily's heart swelled as she listened to the conversation swell like a wave, but still, the thought of Mason's challenge haunted her. Doubts crept in, wrapping around her thoughts like vines. Would these small efforts translate into real change? Would it help their financial struggles? No, she had to believe, for Jake's sake. He was pouring his heart into this. If they could just find a way to connect with one another. As the crowd buzzed and collaborated, Jake glanced over and caught her eye. He smiled, a fierce light igniting behind his fierce gaze. "Mom. Come here." His words cut through the haze of anxiety, pulling her back to the moment. "Yeah." She joined him, taking in the faces around them filled with excitement and determination. "Let's plan something bigger than just the bake sale," Jake said. "Let's create a community challenge. We're going to need everyone to prepare and share their talent. Maybe a talent show. People would buy tickets for fun. Everyone has something to offer." Emily felt a jolt of pride surge as their eyes met. Jake was indeed becoming a leader. "I love it. That'll bring us together and raise funds for so many causes." The laughter and ideas flowed sparkled like sunlight on the horizon as the energy of the room fed off them, and Emily felt that flicker of hope turn into a roaring flame, but before she could filter through her thoughts, the sharp sound of a door creaking open pierced the moment. Mason stood in the threshold, flanked by his supporters. "What's this?" he called out, his voice dripping with disdain. "More rehearsed ideas for your little fairy tale?" The sea of excitement stilled. Emily's heart dropped. Was his shadow going to loom again? Jake stood his ground. "We're not backing down, Mason. We have a mission. Maybe you should consider helping instead of mocking." The air crackled with tension as the crowd shifted nervously, the previous momentum wavering. Emily's mind raced. Mason's eyes glinted, clearly enjoying the chaos he stirred. "You think this will amount to anything? It's all a joke. You think a couple of sales will change lives?" Jake clenched his jaw, a fire igniting again in his belly. "It's not just about sales. It's about bringing people together. You Haven T stepped foot in here trying to help, so maybe you don't understand. Or maybe I do," Mason sneered, "and it's just plain pathetic." But Jake didn't falter. "You can call it what you want, but we're not letting fear dictate our actions anymore." The warmth in the room began to radiate again, the excitement flickering back to life. Emily took a deep breath, sensing the shifting tide. "We'll lift each other up. Together," she interjected, her voice ringing out with a newfound clarity. "That's what community means. We have something here, and hope is contagious." "What's contagious is naivety," Mason barked back, attempting to swing the tide. But people started to murmur, their determination pressing against his criticism. "Let them try," called a voice among the crowd, sparking more agreement. "You're right, Emily. We can do this." It was as if they were rising from ashes, slowly but surely. A sense of unity formed a bond stronger than the doubts bearing down on them. The rhythm of collective hope surged again. Emily felt emboldened. This isn't just about money, it's about connection, resilience, and love. We're coming together not just for ourselves, but for everyone who feels just as lost. "I'm telling you, this will end in chaos," Mason warned, but his voice wavered. The confidence surrounding Jake and Emily pressed against him like a weight. "Maybe you're not on board, Mason," Jake said, "but we don't need you. We're doing this for everyone who seeks something better. Because we believe in our community." A loud cheer swept through the room, faces brightening, hearts rising to the beat of their collective strength. Mason's face fell, the camaraderie swallowing him as he turned to exit. "Good luck with that," he spat before storming out, leaving an uneasy silence behind him. With a collective exhale, energy began bubbling again, laughter erupting as people rallied around Jake and Emily. "We've got this," someone yelled, and then, voices of support cascaded through the air. That night marked a change. No longer would fear dictate their path. Instead, every gaping shadow would be met with commitment and love. Heathered with laughter, the community lit a spark that would light their way through the darkness. As the last conversation simmered, emotions swirled, laughter sang, and possibility danced in the air, Emily realized that they were not alone anymore. Hope was resilient, and their spirits rose like the sun, brighter than before, more vibrant than ever. Jake enveloped her in a hug, the warmth between them a silent acknowledgement, a bond renewed, forged in adversity. Here they stood together, ready to confront whatever came next. This was their moment, their journey together, and as she glanced outside the community center windows, watching the last sliver of sunlight dip below the horizon, Emily knew they would face every horizon together. It was time to rise, time to believe, and time to love. If they could create even a little change, maybe the world they dreamed of was within reach. This was the moment, and they were ready. Now it's your moment. You need to subscribe now to this channel to follow our journey and not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment down below your thoughts and feelings about the ending. We want to hear you, and don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Spread the magic.